Hello my friends, I'm Chris from TechSpert and happy days are here again because Motorola has launched a fresh new smartphone. It's the Moto G9 Play, the first of the fresh new budget-friendly G9 smartphone series, and you can bet your ass not the last. It's not simply as just the bog standard Moto G9 over in India, just to confuse matters a bit, but here in the UK you'll be able to bag it for 159 quid right now actually from the likes of Carphone, Vodafone and retailers like Argos and John Lewis. And if that sounds rather tempting, well, I'm going to yank at the Moto G9 Play out of the box and take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software so you know exactly what to expect ahead of my in-depth review, which should be coming next week. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. There's the actual G9 Play itself. Let's just pop that aside and see what other wonders are held within this box of magnificence. And the answer is the obligatory README, one pokey pin device to get your SIM in there, a 3-pin adapter with the Muse and pop-up action, and a USB cable which thankfully is Type-C and not that god-awful micro USB nonsense. And that is your lot, though as you can see here, Motorola has kindly stuffed a condom case on the Moto G9 Play to begin with as well. So if you choose to keep the Moto G9 Play clad in that'll just help to protect it from bumps and scrapes. As you can see, that wraps all the way around the edges and the back. But as I like to live life dangerously, I'm going to whip that off right now and check out the Moto G9 Play in all of its raw naked glory. Now first I've got to say the Motorola G9 Play is a hefty wee bugger. It's about 200 grams according to the specs, certainly got some serious weight behind it. The back end is of course constructed from plastic as you would expect at this sort of price point. It does have a glossy finish to it as well, so it does look like it will pick up a little bit of fingerprint greasy scuffage, but hopefully nothing too bad. And the G9 Play is of course available in your typical Motorola blue colour, so this is sapphire blue. It's quite a bold blue actually, seems to be a little bit sort of richer compared with usual, almost a sort of a purpley blue, quite like that. Otherwise if you're not a fan you can also grab it in forest green or spring pink. I'm guessing if you do dare to rip off that condom case as I have, though, the back end will probably scratch up quite easily being plastic unfortunately, but hopefully it should survive a couple of drops alright. And Motorola has also added its usual water repellent design to the G9 Play as well, so hopefully it should be fine for a bit of inclement British weather, which of course we're more than accustomed to. A couple of other interesting design aspects. We've actually got 3 buttons down here on the right edge, all clustered quite close together. That's because you've got a power button, the volume rocker, and also a dedicated Google Assistant button. And also up top it's great to see, like most budget-friendly blowers, you've got a nice bit of headphone jack action. Anyway, that's enough waffle. It's time to slap my SIM in this bad boy and get it all set up, and then we can check out the rest of the hardware and the software. And as you can see from the SIM tray, the Moto G9 Play is a dual SIM device. Otherwise you can use that second SIM slot in order to shove in a micro SD memory card of up to 512 gigabytes in size to expand their either 64 or 128 gigs of onboard storage. Righty-ho, so the Moto G9 Play all set up, good to go. And as usual, if you've used a Motorola smartphone, you're generally aware of them. It's generally quite a stock version of Android slapped on there, in this case of course Android 10. So as you can see, just your general bog standard Android layout, no heavy launchers on top or anything like that. If you dive into the settings, you'll see basically all your standard Android stuff. That said, Motorola has chucked in a few bonus features in there to make the Moto G9 Play even more usable. So for instance, you do have that rear mounted fingerprint sensor, which so far seems a little bit slow to respond, but it gets there in the end. But it is actually backed up with face unlock support as well, which doesn't come as standard in stock Android. So for instance, you've got raise to wake support as well, so you can just pick up the Moto G9 Play, it'll turn on, start scanning for your mug, and again, you're into those desktops. And it's great to see the fully featured Moto Experiences app here on board the G9 Play as well, something that's usually the missing or stripped back on these more budgets, like super budget friendly Motorola's. And this adds in all kinds of great stuff, so you can quickly and easily personalize your smartphone, as you can see, with various styles, choose the layout and all that kind of stuff. If you go into the gestures, this is one of my favorite sections because it's got the likes of the lift to unlock, the 3-finger screenshot, and the best bit of smartphone gesture support ever, the double karate chop to turn on that torch. Sadly though, there is no one-handed mode in there, which is definitely missing in action. That's a real shame because of course, as usual, the Moto G9 Play is a 6.5-inch beast. And thankfully, if nothing else, you can at least drag down that notifications bar using the rear mounted fingerprint sensor, just a quick swipe of your finger and that drags it down, so that's better than nothing. And you can also pull down that notifications bar from anywhere on the screen as well, which also helps out quite considerably. You've also got a full tips and tricks guide there to learn some of the best bits of the Moto G9 Play. You can fiddle around with the display and all that stuff. And one of the fresher additions to the Motorola experiences is the brilliant Moto Game Time feature, and that's great. use if you like your bit of PubG, Call of Duty Mobile, stuff like that. Adds a whole bunch of game-centric tools such as blocking notifications while you're busy murdering those pesky school kids online. As far as other Android features go, we've got that dedicated Google Assistant key up here on the top right corner, as I mentioned before. Just a quick prod of that, and as you can see, up they pop. That's something found on quite a lot of budget-friendly devices like the Motorola's and the Nokias, and I still don't understand why it's a thing. I'm guessing that Google probably insists it happens, because of course you've got loads of other ways of calling up the Assistant. You've got the Assistant app icon. You can swipe from either of the bottom corners, like so. You can simply swipe right to bring up the Google page, and then you've got like the little microphone icon there, or you can just say, "Hey Google," as it says there. So that there physical assistant button, it's kind of like adding a shot of Drambuie into a Long Island iced tea. You know what? There's plenty of booze in there already. It just seems strictly redundant. And yes, I've had a good flip around in the settings, and I can't find anywhere obvious where you can actually remap that button to a different app of your choosing. Still, that gripe aside, I'm definitely loving that stock version of Android. Seems to be running nice and smoothly, and you've got plenty of other great features on here like dual band Wi-Fi support as well, and full NFC support with Google Pay. And touchwood, seems to be all set up and ready for action here in the UK, although it does say on Motorola's website that it only works in select European countries. You might want to double check if you're outside of the UK just to make sure it'll definitely work for you. So certainly as far as £150-ish smartphones go, it seems to have all of the features that you'd kind of hope would be packed in there, but you can't always expect. Now let's move on to the display. It's a 6.5-inch IPS panel. As you can see there, sort of slightly thick bezels, but again at this sort of price point that's to be expected. Now this is only a dinky wee nipple notch up top, so nothing too offensive. And what you have here is a 1600 by 720 pixel resolution, so it's just HD plus as opposed to full HD plus, which is a bit of a shame considering the gigantic size of this display, but those images are still reasonably crisp. It'll be absolutely fine for kicking back with a film, bit of Netflix, whatever. Well, speaking of the old double karate chop to turn on that torch, definitely got a lot of big love for Cobra Kai over on Netflix. Get on that if you haven't seen it already, especially if you're a massive 80s geek like myself. And on the audio front, of course, you do have that headphone jack up top if you want to get connected. Otherwise, you've got full Bluetooth 5.0 support as well, so strong audio game. Now, if there's usually a problem with these budget-friendly handsets, it's normally the performance, normally a little bit stuttery here and there. The Moto G9 Play is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 662 chipset, backed by 4 gigs of RAM. Touchwood, so far seems absolutely fine. I'm certainly not expecting world-beating performance, and as you can see from the Geekbench 5 scores, pretty basic stuff. 288 single core, 1405 for the multi-core. But you know what? I think you'll be able to run the likes of PubG and Call of Duty Mobile on the sort of medium to low detail settings and hopefully get a respectable frame rate, but I'll be testing that out for my full review. Good news on the battery front though, because it's a whopping 5000 mAh stuffed inside the Moto G9 Play, so hopefully this bad boy should keep you going for a full day and a half to 2 days between charges. That matches the likes of the Moto G8 Power Lite from the previous gen and recent handsets like the Redmi 9. And you got the usual battery saver modes and stuff should you need them, and apparently the phone supports 15-watt turbo charge as well, so recharging hopefully shouldn't take too long. So let's finish up this delightful unboxing of Motorola's Moto G9 Play with a quick squint at that triple lens rear camera. Now that primary lens is a 48 megapixel effort, but it's a quad pixel sensor, so it will take 12 megapixel pics by default. And Motorola doesn't usually offer a way of actually boosting that up to 48 megapixels, so 12 megapixel will be the maximum res. But you got all the standard features you'd expect, including a good bit of HDR support, and you can also switch quickly to the manual mode with a quick tap like so. That gives you full control over the likes of the white balance, the ISO levels. And you can even capture pictures in a good bit of RAW format as well if you want to edit on the fly. As well as that, you can also shoot up to, I believe, full HD resolution video. Let me just check. Yeah, full HD at either 30 or 60 frames per second is how it maxes out. And then if you give this little button here a little tappy tap, as you can see, you've got a bunch of random bonus modes as well, including a macro mode, because yes, of course, naturally, you've got a 2 megapixel macro sensor on this thing. And there's also a 2 megapixel depth sensor as well for your portrait mode shots. That'll just add a nice bit of bokeh action to the background and help good old Monica here to stand out. And it's also really good to see Motorola's night vision mode crop up here on the Moto G9 Play, because that's usually missing from the more budget-friendly efforts, so that's definitely a handy little addition. This can just capture lots of pics at different exposure levels and meld them all together for a brighter, more natural looking result. And then last up, if you flip around to the front-facing 8 megapixel selfie camera, you'll be able to shoot some very sexy looking photos with that, no doubt. Everything does look a little bit soft, but then it is quite ambient light in here in the studio. Boom! And people ask me why I'm not on Instagram. Anyhow, I'll be fully testing out the Moto G9 Play's camera tech for my in-depth review, which will be going live next week. By the time this video goes live, I'll already have been using it for a couple of days as my full-time phone. So feel free to leave any questions in the comments and I will try to get through as many of those as possible. And Motorola will be launching some new tech as well next week, next Wednesday evening, in fact, so stay tuned for more information on that. I'll be putting up some videos, hopefully with any luck. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do poke, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a lovely weekend. Cheers everyone, love you.